Hello everybody, welcome to our next live training here in the Ambitious Women in Private Practice group. My name is Sian Burton. I am a marketing consultant and practice scaling expert. And today I want to talk to you about something that I'm really passionate about. I'm going to try not to go on about this for too long because I don't want to take up too much of your time, but any of my clients will tell you that it is a topic I've been getting increasingly passionate about over the last few months, and that is the title of practice manager. It is the most commonly used title for the person in your practice who manages the day-to-day operations of your practice. That's generally where it is used. And why do I have such an issue with it? Let me tell you. The reason that I have a real issue with this title, and it's always sat a bit weird with me, and I couldn't quite figure out why until recently. Over the last few months, I've had several clients hit the same challenge, and I'm like, this is why I don't like that title. So here's what I see happen. People get to about $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in revenue, and they know that they can't keep growing on their own and doing all of the management of the admin team. Like by that point, you have some admin team, right? But you can't keep managing all. It's just too much. You know, you need help to scale. So common belief in the private practice world tells you that the role that you need is a practice manager. Now, a practice manager, I've done a separate video on who is a practice manager and who is a senior admin. I'm not going to go into that bit, but a practice manager should be the person who is doing managing all of your HR, doing financial management for you. They should be overseeing all your admin. They should be creating systems and processes in your business to streamline all of your processes and to remove everything from you that you don't want to be doing. Now, that is one skill set when you're at $300,000 or $400,000. At that level, the required skill set is, say, here. But that skill set is a really bizarre skill set to ask of someone. There isn't a role in any corporate environment, there isn't any job title that has that expectation of someone other than a CEO. And I mean like a CEO in a corporate business where they're expected to have HR experience, financial experience, like awareness of them. There isn't any other role that exists. There is no other industry where someone is expected to be able to be across marketing, HR, operations, finance, and management of admin team or management of team, right? It just doesn't exist. So you're already setting yourself up for failure in trying to find this person, because if you find one, then they're literally a unicorn, and they won't be good at all those things because nobody is. But let's just say you find someone who can help you when you're at $300,000, $400,000 and you call them your practice manager. That is the general advice, and that is what most people do. But let me tell you where you come unstuck. When you get to $800,000, $900,000, and this is where I have seen the problem again and again recently. When you get to $800,000, $900,000 and you want to go to $1 million, $1.2 million, beyond, the person, more often than not, who at $300,000, $400,000 was your practice manager and was great, is probably struggling when you get to $800,000, $900,000, and definitely doesn't have the skill set to take you to 1.5 million. Because what is required of let's keep using that title, a practice manager at $800,000, $900,000 is very different to $400,000. And what is required at over $1 million, 1.2 million is wildly different. Now you have a problem, because you've given someone a title that suggests they manage your practice, but now you're realizing that they're not capable of running your practice in the way that you need it to be run right now, and you are massively overwhelmed because you're trying to fill all the gaps of their lacking skill set. Now, that in itself is not a problem, right? The fact that someone's outgrown your requirements for the role, it is normal. You know, you need different things of different people. This is why as businesses grow, they tend to have more and more senior, more and more experienced people coming in, because you require more of the person and they take more responsibility. The problem is that when you call someone practice manager and they can no longer fulfill that role, you have this very difficult situation where you either need to hire someone above the person, you need to take the job title off them, or you need to just carry the load, which is what I see people doing. They just try and fill the gaps rather than having a difficult conversation, because they've backed themselves into a corner using that practice manager title. Because if you bring in someone over a practice manager, like a practice director, that just tells the person that you've got in practice manager role that they're not good enough to do the role. Now, they might not be, but that's not a very nice experience. And that creates all this not great feeling in the team. And that's why people don't make that move, because they don't want to deal with the difficult conversations and making people feel hurt and inadequate, particularly as this person has almost always been pivotal in you getting to 800,000-900,000, right? They're usually the linchpin that has got you there, but they can't get you from where you are to where you need to be. And actually they're making, like, it's a struggle where you are right now because they can't support you in the way they need to. It can be quite difficult to change their title, because if you don't do that well, they know what you're doing. Like, oh, you've taken my title from me, you've given me something else because I wasn't doing a good job. So the reason I really dislike that practice manager title is because it's almost impossible to find someone who can actually do that role well in the first place. So let's not lump that whole role together and expect someone to be able to do it. But if you do find someone who is good for where you are now and can do all those things, it's highly unlikely that they are going to be able to support you to 800,000-900,000 and beyond, because they just don't have the skill set. Like, someone who's going to join your business at 400,000 and be paid what you're paying them, let's say that's $40 an hour, is not going to have the knowledge and experience for a business that is going from 900 to $1 million, because they wouldn't have come to you at 400,000 if they did. And if they've worked with you since you've been at that point, yes, they've grown with your business, but they still don't have the outside knowledge and experience that you need to take you forward. And it becomes you trying to figure things out and pulling them along instead of them driving you and telling you how things should be. So don't use the title. If you've not used the title yet, do not use the title. If you've used it, I'll share with you in a minute how you can elegantly backtrack out of that. But if you haven't used the title yet, do not use it. Use instead things like operations associate, because the vast majority of that role is operations. It's around systems and processes, managing team, putting policies and procedures in place, system HR. Call it operations manager, operations associate. I would even start at associate if you're at 300,000-400,000 or below. Start with them being an operations associate. Then you have capacity to promote them if they're doing well into an operations manager role, or to bring an operations above them as you grow and expand. Now you're not taking anything from them and you're not changing their role. You're creating a new role that they have the opportunity to apply for, basically, but you also open it up to other people. Now, yes, they might be a bit put out if they don't get the new role, but if they can equally see that the person coming in is way more experienced and has different skill set to them, it's much more palatable, right? You could also use administration manager if you want someone to manage your admin team. You could use locations manager if you've got, because I've heard this with a client where they had 2 sites. They were like, oh, well, we called them a practice manager because we had 2 sites. Call them a locations manager, so they're in charge of running the locations, not the entire practice. So use different titles from outside the private practice space to title this role so that you don't back yourself into a corner. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I backed myself into a corner 2 years ago because I used that title. Firstly, know that you were in the vast majority of people, because it is the common, go-to. Oh, you need a practice manager. And I did the same thing. You need to hire a practice manager. It's only been watching what happens when you use that title and you're scaling. I'm like, don't it, just stop using that title. If you've used it though, and you're resonating with what I'm saying, and you're like, my practice manager is not, I'm feeling really under the pump at 700,000-800,000 or 6 even, or 9, wherever it might be, somewhere in there. I'm feeling really under the pump right now because I'm trying to trying to keep my practice manager on track. Like I have to explain to them what we need to do. I'm trying to tell them what systems to create. I'm trying to make sure that they're across everything. If you're carrying them, then they're not the right person and they're absolutely not going to take you to the next level. So here's what I suggest you do. We talk a lot in Success Without Sacrifice about working in zones of genius as owners. And so that's what I'm going to get you to use to create this positive win-win situation for you and your former practice manager. What I would get you to do is to think about what are the things where you are in what we call your zone of genius, where you are in your excellence, you're in your zone of genius and you're doing things that only you can do in the way that you do them. So this might be empowering a team, it might be setting the vision for the practice, it might be a certain way that you treat that you have created that's your unique genius. Think about the things that are in your zone of genius that only you can do, no one else can do them like you can do them, and write those down. Then think about the things that you're really excellent at. These are things you're really, really good at. And there are some people who are as good as you, and there are a few people for whom it's their zone of genius, so they're better than you, but you are really good at it and you enjoy them. Put those things into a list too. You now have your job description as the owner of the practice. What I then want you to do is to do the same thing with your practice manager and look at where their zone of excellence is and where their zone of genius is. Where do they add their magic to your practice? Where are they exceptional at the things that they do? But with them, I want you to think about what things are they competent at? So they do them, but it's definitely not something that they are the best in the field at or even particularly good at. So an example would be having a practice manager doing bookkeeping. Okay, they can do it, they can click and select things, but they're not a bookkeeper. And I can guarantee they're not doing as good a job as a bookkeeper for whom it's their zone of genius, right? Think about those things they're doing that they do, but they're not great at them. Definitely not exceptional at them, and it's definitely not their zone of genius. Have them list those things out, and then have them think about things they currently do that they're incompetent at. And this isn't a judgment. It's just things like, if I was talking about, I would be incompetent at medical billing or invoicing NDIS because I just don't know what I'm doing, right? Your practice manager will be doing some of that stuff that they're literally just making up as they go along. They might be Googling things. Get them to write those things down. Now you can see where their zone of genius is, and they're going to probably share some areas with you. So they'll say like, oh, I'm really good at the systems and I'm really good at the financial stuff. I really feel like that's where I add magic, but I'm not very good at the team piece. I'm not very good at recruitment, and I'm really not good at the marketing piece. Now you know the things that they're really good at and that they love, and you can carve a role out for them that does those things. And then you can take away the other things that they're not so good at or that they don't enjoy. So let's say that they come to you and say, I really love managing the admin team. I really love creating the admin systems and processes. And I really love being across the financials and supporting you. They're the things I really love to do. Okay, great. So let's create a role for you that plays to those strengths. Let's create a role where you are Director of Admin Services or Director of Admin, and you have wrapped into that role the pieces that you love. And then let's find someone, because those things that you don't want to do aren't my zone of genius or my excellence either. So that I can see that we have all these things over here that neither of us want to do or are really good at. So let's create a role for these, and we'll have somebody else come in to support us on those things. What title do you think would make most sense? Sorry, this is how I would position it around the title. What title do you think makes most sense for the role that we've got here? So, they might be like, oh, I don't know. You can say, well, it's more about the admin and the financials. So maybe admin and financial manager would make more sense. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. And then we'll call this person the operations manager because they're going to be doing systems and those kind of things. Now it's a win-win. They've got a role they love that plays to their strengths. You're giving them permission to stop doing things they don't like doing. You've asked them what they think the role should be called instead of telling them that they're no longer practice manager, and you're not using that title again, right? Once you've got rid of it, do not introduce it again. Bring in an operations manager or some other title, whatever those leftover things are, that matches those and removes that title from your vocabulary, because then you can always go up and down, improving, like making people more senior, adding more senior people in. But that practice manager role says I'm the boss. I'm in charge of everything below the owner. And that actually is not helpful. It's not helpful, right? It's not helpful at any point. It just seems helpful when you're at 300,000-400,000 and desperately need help. So your zone of genius, your zone of excellence, form your job role. Say to them to get them to do the same, but you also want them to look at what they're doing that they're competent at and incompetent at. Remove all the things they don't want to do and everything they're competent and incompetent at. Craft a new role that does all those things. Have them choose the name that they think makes most sense for their new role, and create a new title for the other role you've crafted, and then hire for that role. Now, it might be that you can't do that immediately and you might just need to focus on delegating some of the things off their plate. But I can guarantee you, as soon as you start to get your practice manager, as they're currently called, working in their zone of genius and not doing things that they aren't good at, and you give them permission to stop doing those things, your life will get easier and the practice will start to grow, and it will give you the revenue injection that means you can take on that role. If you're really, really, really struggling and you're doing 50, 60-hour weeks, then I would really consider doing this sooner rather than later, because practice managers who aren't capable of supporting you at the level you are now at become like a dead weight to the practice. They're trying their absolute best, but they become like a dead weight, and it slows your growth down, it slows you down. But not only that, it will burn you out in the process because you're trying to drag them along. So I hope that was helpful. Key takeaways: never use the practice manager role if you have not used it yet. Remove it from your vocabulary. Use any other title you like. And if you're stuck, ask in this group. Operations associate, admin manager, head of admin, anything but practice manager, because once you use that title, it backs you in a corner and you have nowhere to go when that person is no longer able to fulfill on that role. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really excited to hear how you found this. Was it an aha moment for you? Have you used the practice manager role title? Know that you are going to be in the majority if you have. How is that serving you at the moment? Are you, do you feel like you're backed in the corner? So I hope that was helpful. I look forward to seeing you guys all again next week. And I will look forward to seeing your comments on this video soon.